Hello everyone, my name is Simone Tagliapietra. I am a senior researcher at the Fondazione Eni Enrico Mattei in Milan, and in particular I am part of a research program called Energy Scenarios and Policy, within which at FEEM we analyze the international and European energy markets and international and European energy policies. It's a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to share some ideas with you today about the European energy security and in particular about the role and the case of natural gas. Let me start by telling you why gas is important for Europe. Gas covers 1/4 of the European energy mix. So imagine to have a cake composed by 4 slices, one of each is gas. This provides you a little bit the taste of the importance of gas. Gas is important to warm up houses in wintertime, it is important for cooking, it is important also to generate electricity that we use to light our environments or even, of course, charge our computer. So gas is a cornerstone in the European energy system. Now, why is gas security of supply important? The issue of gas security of supply in Europe is basically relevant for 2 issues. The first is that we import in Europe 1/3 of our gas from Russia. In Europe, we have very little domestic production of gas, and we are obliged to import most of our gas. In the graph here, you can see on the right the composition of our supply portfolio, and you can see that domestic production covers just an initial step of our gas demand. Then we need to have Russia, 1/3 of our gas consumption, and then Norway, Algeria, Qatar, Libya, Nigeria, and other minor suppliers. So the idea here is really that Russia covers a key role in our gas supply. Then we have a specific characteristic of gas, which is the fact that gas relies on infrastructures. To transport gas, you need long pipelines that runs typically across many countries. Imagine pipes starting from Siberia, channeled through Europe, reaching, for example, Italy or Germany. So thousands of kilometers of pipe delivering gas from the field to the final consumers. This means that the relationship that is created between the supplier of gas and the demand side of gas, it's a sort of wedding. It's not like oil market, where you have these oil tankers going around the world freely wherever they want because oil can be transported in a barrel. Gas needs solid and really very expensive infrastructure like pipelines, and then also as LNG. LNG, liquefied natural gas, is a technology that basically allows you to ship gas in a boat. And this is a technology becoming increasingly important in the world. However, also to have this opportunity to use this liquefied natural gas LNG technology, you need to have specific terminals to create transform the LNG in the supply country and retransform it into gas in the country where actually the gas will be consumed. So again, very long-lasting and expensive infrastructure. So this high reliance on Russia and this high reliance on infrastructures make gas a very sensible issue as far as security is concerned. In particular, Russia has been traditionally a key driver for the European policy in the area of gas security supply, because in 2006, in 2009, and to some extent in 2014, Russia has cut its supplies to Europe. This was mainly because Russia had several issues with Ukraine, a key transit country for the pipelines connecting Russia and Europe. And as a result of this crisis between Russia and Ukraine, the supplies to Europe were also halted. This means that we got factually in 2006 and 9 humanitarian crisis in Europe, and particularly in Eastern Europe, where people died due to the fact that during the winter they couldn't warm them up at home with their gas heating system. So, very big issue for Europe that really paved the way for the emergence of a strong policy of diversification for gas supply in Europe. But it should be reminded that gas security supply in Europe is not just an issue regarding Russia, it's much wider. Europe is placed in the world, in the geography of the world, in the middle of a very geopolitically volatile neighborhood. In the south, we have North Africa, Algeria, Libya, very complex geopolitical situation. Look at Libya. In the east, we have Ukraine, very difficult geopolitical situation, of course, with Russia. So there are many geopolitical issues that can change. For example, the flows that we have of gas from Libya and Algeria. Who knows? For example, during the so-called Arab Spring, Libya cut its gas supplies to Italy, and Russia had to supply more gas to Italy in order not to create a crisis in the country. So risks to gas security supply can come not only from Russia, but from many other suppliers we have in our neighborhood. Then we have the commercial uncertainties. For example, Norway is considered as a European producer, basically, because even if Norway is not part of the EU, it is a country that naturally belongs to Europe. So Norway is an important pillar after Russia of our gas security supply, but the production of Norway is foreseen to go down over the next decades simply because the resources of Norway are depleting. LNG, this market of ships I mentioned you, is a global market that and typically these ships go where prices are higher. In Asia, prices are much higher than in Europe, so there is a big competition between these markets to secure LNG supply. So LNG might not be so reliable as a source as a pipeline is, because it's there, it's fixed. So all this is to say that gas security supply is a structural issue that in Europe will last for decades to come. You might now ask me, why should we care about gas if we live in an age of deep decarbonization? We know that we have the Paris Agreement, we know that we are all committed, our governments are all committed to cut greenhouse gas emissions, to reduce the role of fossil fuels. So why should we care about gas? I would propose you to look at these three graphs. These three graphs are basically a snapshot, or better, three different snapshots of the potential developments of gas in the European Union according to three different scenarios. These are developed by the International Energy Agency, the most important institution as far as energy analysis is concerned. Current policy, it means business as usual. So just do the things that you have always done. So in this case, burn oil and gas a lot. If you look at these, look at the blue bars, our imports, European imports, are going up very much vis-a-vis the current imports of, let's say here, 2013, by 2040. This is due to the fact that demand overall the two charts, the bars together are of course representing the European demand of gas, is going up. So in the case we continue to burn oil and gas as we have always done, imports requirements in the EU will go up a lot. Look at the 450 scenario. This is a scenario designed accordingly to the reach of the 2 degrees target. So if we are committed to the Paris Agreement, if we really want to limit the increase of global temperature below 2 degrees, this is where your gas demand should be in 2040. Well, even in such a strong, very difficult to achieve, of course, decarbonization scenario, gas imports in 2040 in Europe will be at the same level of today. In a middle scenario, the new policies, that is a scenario based on the current policies implemented by governments in Europe, imports, as you see, will grow in 2030, 2040. So this is just to show that even in a strong decarbonization scenarios, gas demand will be there in Europe and import requirements will be even increasing. This is basically due to the fact that even if in the deep decarbonization scenario the demand is going down, domestic production of gas in Europe is going down even more. So less domestic production, it means more imports needed. So this is really to show you the structural need we have of gas imports. But there is a good news. If we look at the gas infrastructure that we have today in Europe, pipelines and LNG receiving capacity, there is an astonishing reality that we are using very little of this infrastructure. If we look at the pipelines, we have to import gas from Russia, Norway, Algeria, and Libya. We are currently utilizing only 58% of this pipeline capacity. This percentage is even more astonishing in the case of LNG. Our LNG receiving capacity, so a lot of LNG terminals around the shores of Europe, there to receive these ships full of gas, mainly in Spain, the United Kingdom, and then France and Italy, well, we are only using 30% of this capacity. This means that our current gas infrastructure in Europe is massively underutilized. And this is an asset to increase our gas security of supply. In fact, if we look at the margin of flexibility that the European gas system has, taking into consideration this capacity, as you can see in this graph, the flexibility we have is very, very, very considerable. At the aggregate level, the EU has a very considerable margin of flexibility to manage eventual interruptions of gas supplies, for example, from Russia or other suppliers. The problem is that in order to make use of this flexibility, you need a European market that is well interconnected. This means that if you have, for example, an LNG receiving capacity in Spain, because over the last 10 years Spain built a lot of LNG terminals, you need to ensure that you have an infrastructure in place of pipelines able to deliver gas from Spain to France, to Italy, to Germany, to other sides of Europe. And this is not the case today in Europe. If you look at this map of the European Commission shows in red all the interconnections, the pipelines that are needed to be constructed in Europe in order to allow this flexibility to materialize. For example, today Spain, as you can see, has a number of LNG receiving terminals, the blue dots, but it is only connected to France with a very small pipeline. So, for example, this mid-cut pipeline that you can see outlined in the map is a project, a long-lasting project to connect with more capacity Spain and France in order to allow more LNG coming to Spain to go to Central Europe. However, a number of political issues are preventing the construction of this pipeline because the government of Spain will like it, because of course it means that more gas can transit through Spain, so it will be an asset for the country. But for example, France doesn't want the pipeline because its gas company doesn't want to have more competition from the LNG coming from Spain. So there is factually a disunion today in Europe because countries are still very reluctant about integrating themselves due to the fact that countries continue to have divergent interests as far as energy markets are concerned. And as you know, energy is not a competence that is fully up to the European Union, because accordingly to the European Union treaties, energy is still an issue that mainly belongs to national states. Only states can decide their own energy mix. Europe has a role of homogenizing the market, has a role in creating a global strategy for Europe for energy, but the fundamental decisions, particularly about the energy mix, are still up to the states, because energy is a very, very political and politically sensitive issue. The case of this pipeline project connecting Spain and France is an example on how even the efforts of the EU to promote this project, for example, this pipeline is called Project of European Common Interest, so the European Union is pushing a lot for this project, but it's still very difficult to materialize because of the opposition, in this case of the French, for example, government. So the project is not advancing. So around we have many opportunities in terms of new potential supplies. For example, you might have heard that in Egypt was discovered in 2015 a huge natural gas field called Zohr. Many other fields were discovered in Israel and Cyprus over the last years. Big potential for new LNG supplies to Europe that is really nearby the corner for us. But without the previously mentioned kind of internal interconnections in Europe, it will be very difficult for us to fully make use of this new potential of supply coming up around us that can factually help Europe to enhance its gas security of supply. The other big opportunity we have is the Southern Gas Corridor. As you know, probably the region of the Middle East and the Caspian is richly endowed by gas supplies. Iran has the largest gas reserves of the world, more than Russia. Turkmenistan has also very big gas reserves. The Kurdistan region of Iraq, Azerbaijan, all these countries are more or less endowed with rich gas resources. And for this reason, there is this project of connecting this Middle East and Caspian region with Europe through a pipeline, a project called for many years Nabucco, that then changed over time, supported always by the US and by the European Commission, because of course it was a way to diminish the role of Russia in the European gas market. Now finally this project is under construction. So now in Turkey there is a big construction going on this Trans-Anatolian pipeline that will connect the border between Turkey and Georgia to the border between Turkey and Greece, where another pipeline called Trans-Adriatic pipeline will start to reach Italy via Albania. And this corridor, Southern Gas Corridor, would allow Azerbaijan gas supplies to reach Italy by 2020 for an amount of 10 billion cubic meters per year, which is about 5% of the European import requirements, but still it is at least the first phase of a new supply route for Europe, so it's important for this reason. Then additional supplies from Turkmenistan, Iran, and Kurdistan region might eventually materialize also through this pipeline in the future. Again, in order to fully make use of this diversification route, the gas should not be only intended for Italy, but also be shipped in the north in order to allow, for example, the gas to reach Germany, which is a very important market in Europe. And to do this, certain changes should be done in the interconnections between Italy, Austria, Switzerland, and then up to Central Europe. And again, here it will be a matter of cooperation among the countries to ensure the solidarity needed in order to have a secured gas market in Europe. So let me come to a conclusion. We have seen that countries in Europe have a very big established gas infrastructure, but we are not fully making use of it. And this creates problem of gas security of supply because we are still over-reliant on single suppliers like Russia. The only way to be secure in Europe is the one of putting together our markets, being integrated, and creating the interconnections between states in order to allow a great flexibility and to allow gas to flow everywhere in Europe from point A to point B. By acting together on external supply projects such as the Southern Gas Corridor, the EU could also have more political and economic leverage, because moving individually, Italy, Germany, the Netherlands, is not like moving together as EU, the largest market in the world. So, the fundamental idea here is that coordinating European gas markets at the European level would allow to seize synergies that single member states cannot even see, because while looking only at their individual situation, they cannot see the synergies of being in cooperation with other neighboring states. So, to conclude, gas and overall energy markets are certainly an example on how the EU is ultimately better off united. So if we stand united, we are stronger. And energy, gas markets is just one example of this issue. I particularly care about sending you this message because in a time of Brexit, in a time of in a year with, as we know, elections coming up between France, Germany, and so on, the European project is under historical pressure. So it is important to realize, at least on the basis of clear facts, where the EU can provide us as citizens an added value. Energy, which is the field I work on, is certainly one of the fields where the EU can provide a big added value to all of us, because only by creating these synergies between all the European states, Europe can consider itself as a secure and safe continent today and tomorrow. I hope this message will be something interesting to reflect on for you, and I wish you all the best for your studies. All the best, and thank you for your attention. Bye.